episodes like texting an ex in the middle of the night or pretending to like Gilmore Girls. Or perhaps you go through where you didn't set your limits or express your needs and feelings because you were afraid of being rejected.
You're so stupid. Don't you know how much I love you? Abuse can be obvious. It can leave bruises. Abuse can also be less obvious and leave only internal pain and suffering.
How to deal with a verbally abusive boyfriend. No one deserves to be anyone else's punching bag, physically or verbally. Take steps to remedy the situation. You will need self-awareness, courage, and determination. Optional, counseling. Step 1. Recognize that there are many forms of abuse that don't include physical violence. If your boyfriend demeans you, makes you account for your whereabouts, tells you how to dress and act, or tries to dictate who you can and cannot see, those are all forms of abuse. Verbal abuse often escalates to physical abuse. Step 2. Don't blame yourself. Despite what he may say, you are not bringing this on yourself. No one deserves to be treated disrespectfully. Step 3. Suggest he get counseling to deal with the issues that might be driving his behavior, like low self-esteem. You might also benefit from counseling to help you understand the impact of his abuse. Step 4. Tell your boyfriend you will not tolerate insults or controlling behavior, and mean it. Prepare for the possibility you might walk out. Step 5. If the abuse continues, end the relationship. Break things off during the day in a public place just to be on the safe side. Ask trusted friends to keep an eye out for retaliatory behavior. If he's given you any reason to feel unsafe, try not to be alone for a while after the breakup. Step 6. Resist his attempts to win you back. Abusive relationships often fit a pattern of cruelty, followed by apologies and promises to change, followed by more abuse. Did you know? 1 in 4 teenage girls has experienced verbal abuse by a boyfriend.
Somebody you know might be in one of these abusive relationships. In addition to jealousy, one of the other things that an abusive partner, emotionally abusive partner, will do is try to monitor and control who you speak to and when you speak to them. And they may do this through going through your phone or your social media or your computer, or monitoring who you're spending time with and when you're spending time with these people. There's a big difference between concern and control.
12 signs of being in an abusive relationship. Both boy and girl are abusive in a relationship, but most boys possessive. As shocking as it might be, women can be abusive too. Also, due to the general lack of awareness when it comes to the abuse people face, they don't even realize they're dealing with an abusive relationship. The signs of an abusive relationship can often be so subtle that the people may not realize that they are at the receiving end. Find out if you, or someone you know, is a victim of an abusive relationship by going through this video. Advice on how to deal with an abusive relationship has also been discussed. Abusive relationship has controlling behavior. If he or she will control whom you hang out with, where you go, where you work, what you do with your paycheck, whom you engage with on social media, whom you communicate with, what you wear, and how often you talk to family or friends. Abuser control your discussions, deleting certain contacts. Abuser psychologically control you in your relationship. It was not the abuser loves you, he is jealous of you. 1. Isolating your former friends and family. Common controlling behavior in a relationship is seeking to separate you from your support network, social media, common friends and families. The means of doing so vary from complaining how much time you spend with them, to making bad comments about them, and trying to put a wrench between you. Even some may stop you from having access to social media. 2. Feeling you have to check in for any decision. Control freaks in relationships like to exercise authority over all decisions. They present themselves as wise and possess your rights. They are very possessive. They don't like you to talk, someone else accepts them. 3. There is drama whenever you don't respond ASAP in a controlling relationship. You feel you need to be next to your phone and able to respond anytime. When, for any reason, you are unable to do so, become angry, overly worried, or pout. In any case, you know there will be drama, so you avoid such situations. 4. Controlling what you wear, whom you hang out with, whom you engage with in normal routine or your social life, and even how you spend your money. Being in a controlling relationship, you don't have your own opinion, choices, and wants. The more sophisticated they are, the more they can mask it in the veil of genuine worry or advice. However, over time, it becomes obvious as you receive criticism or emotional freeze out any time you don't do as they would expect. 5. Blaming you for their actions, isolating you from your friends and family, feeling you have to check in for any decisions. There is drama whenever you don't respond to that. Controlling what you wear, eat and how you spend money, blaming you for their actions, criticizing you all the time, threatening you, more or less overtly. Feeling their appreciation and acceptance is conditional, keeping a scoreboard, using guilt or anger to manipulate you. Toxic relationships are complex and can sneak up on anyone. The red flags of relationships can be easy to miss, as many signs of a controlling relationship are not overt and easy to spot. Oftentimes, we attribute those controlling behavior patterns to our partner loving us too much, being extremely caring, or being afraid to lose us. This further complicates recognizing signs of controlling behavior for what they are: attempts to dominate and exert authority. What are the signs of a controlling person? When you understand controlling relationship symptoms further, you can evaluate whether you are in a controlling relationship. 6. Criticizing you all the time. It might seem that anything you do could use improvement when you are in a controlling relationship. Your partner criticizes you over small or big things equally and expects perfection. For example, he saw you on Facebook or Instagram in a photo posing with someone. He got jealous and irritated. He told you never to do that again by stopping you from such behavior as if you are not in an engagement. 7. Threatening you more or less overtly. One of the signs of a controlling partner is threatening. Those intimidations are not always physical and can be veiled. They might threaten, they will cut your contact with friends if you leave them, share secrets you shared with them, or cut the privileges you have at the moment. Look out for feeling trapped in the relationship. 8. Feeling their appreciation and acceptance is conditional. The common thread in many controlling relationships is feeling like you need to earn their love. When you lose some more weight, they will be more attracted to you. When you are successful at work, they care more about you, or when you grant them some favors. All in all, you feel you need to earn their affection by you provide to them, or by changing yourself. Otherwise, you feel not good enough. 9. Keeping a scoreboard compared to a healthy dose of reciprocity. In a controlling relationship, it feels there is a constant count of who did what for whom. It feels exhausting keeping track, but they do it so spontaneously. It could be their way of having the edge over you. 10. Gaslighting relationship. Gaslighting relationship happens when an abuser tries to control a victim by twisting their sense of reality. An example of gaslighting would be a partner doing something abusive and then denying it happened. Gaslighters may also convince their victims that they're mentally unfit or too sensitive, using guilt or anger to manipulate. Depending on how proficient they are in manipulating, the signs will be less or more easy to spot. Be it shouting, cussing, or guilt-tripping you into doing what they want, be on alert, as these are traits of a controlling person. 11. Making you feel you are in their department. Is it wise to give your loved one money without being asked? You should never give your girlfriend or boyfriend money if he or she has not asked you. That is the biggest mistake that most people make in a relationship, that is buying love and owning someone. That is a bad relationship. By giving you money, they feel like owning you because you are in their department. They then ask you for sex and you accept it because you are in their department. 12. Making you feel possessive, simply demanding someone's total attention and love. Person of the opposite sex jealously opposed to that personal independence of or to any influence other than to that person's own upon rights. Desirous of possessing, especially excessively so, is that people who are possessive will not allow others to independently make their own choice. Is possessive bad in a relationship? If taken too far, possessiveness can become a serious issue that leads to other relationship problems. Among them include jealousy, abuse, paranoia, or stalking. Trust is a vital aspect of a healthy relationship. In order to trust, you must feel your partner is reliable, cares about you, and can be counted on. conclusion. Girls, check out your boyfriend. Boys, check out your girlfriends. Here are some signs to see you're in an abusive relationship. Check out the above 12 signs to see if you engage yourself in an abusive relationship. How to get out of an abusive relationship. Getting out of an abusive relationship isn't easy, but you deserve to live free of fear. Here's how to find help for abused and battered women. If you're in an abusive relationship, why doesn't she just leave? It's the question many people ask when they learn that a woman is suffering battery and abuse. But if you're in an abusive relationship, you know that it's not that simple. Ending a significant relationship is never easy. It's even harder when you've been isolated from your family and friends, psychologically beaten down, financially controlled, and physically threatened. If you're trying to decide whether to stay or leave, you may be feeling confused, uncertain, frightened, and torn. Maybe you're still hoping that your situation will change, or you're afraid of how your partner will react if he discovers that you're trying to leave. One moment, you may desperately want to get away, and the next, you may want to hang on to the relationship. Maybe you even blame yourself for the abuse or feel weak and embarrassed because you've stuck around in spite of it. Don't be trapped by confusion, guilt, or self-blame. The only thing that matters is your safety. If you are being abused, remember, you are not to blame for being battered or mistreated. You are not the cause of your partner's abusive behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect. You deserve a safe and happy life. Your children deserve a safe and happy life. You are not alone. There are people waiting to help. If you believe you can help your abuser, it's only natural that you want to help your partner. You may think you're the only one who understands him, or that it's your responsibility to fix his problems. But the truth is that by staying and accepting repeated abuse, you're reinforcing and enabling the behavior. Instead of helping your abuser, you're perpetuating the problem. If your partner has promised to stop the abuse, when facing consequences, abusers often plead for another chance, beg for forgiveness, and promise to change. They may even mean what they say in the moment, but their true goal is to stay in control and keep you from leaving. Most of the time, they quickly return to their abusive behavior once you've forgiven them, and they're no longer worried that you'll leave. If your partner is in counseling or a program for batterers, even if your partner is in counseling, there is no guarantee that he'll change. Many abusers who go through counseling continue to be violent, abusive, and controlling. If your partner has stopped minimizing the problem or making excuses, that's a good sign. But you still need to make your decision based on who he is now, not the man you hope he will become. If you're worried about what will happen if you leave, you may be afraid of what your abusive partner will do, where you'll go, or how you'll support yourself or your children. But don't let fear of the unknown keep you in a dangerous, unhealthy situation. Signs that your abuser is not changing. He minimizes the abuse or denies how serious it really was. He continues to blame others for his behavior. He claims that you're the one who is abusive. He pressures you to go to couples counseling. He tells you that you owe him another chance. You have to push him to stay in treatment. He says that he can't change unless you stay with him and support him. He tries to get sympathy from you, your family and friends. He expects something from you in exchange for getting help. He pressures you to make decisions about the relationship. Safety planning for abused women. Whether or not you're ready to leave your abuser, there are steps you can take to protect yourself. These safety tips may make the difference between being severely injured or killed and escaping with your life. Know your abuser's red flags. Stay alert for signs and clues that your abuser is getting upset and may explode in anger or violence. Come up with several believable reasons you can use to leave the house, both during the day and the night you sense trouble brewing. Identify safe areas of the house. Know where to go if your abuser attacks or an argument starts. Avoid small, enclosed spaces without exits, such as closets or bathrooms, or rooms with weapons, such as the kitchen. If possible, head for a room with a phone and an outside door or window. Listen to some inspirational speakers. At the end of this video, make your choice.
The things we do for love, Think about it. What have you done in the hope of being loved and cared for? Some may remember silly and somewhat embarrassing episodes like texting an ex in the middle of the night or pretending to like Gilmore Girls. Or perhaps you go through very painful and humiliating situations where you didn't set your limits or express your needs and feelings because you were afraid of being rejected. Patterns we see in dysfunctional relationships. In my work as a clinical psychologist, I witness daily how far people will go for love, even if the relationship is directly harmful to them. We call these emotionally abusive relationships, and it has been a previously overlooked field within psychology, but also in society and among the population. Although emotional abuse is illegal by law in Denmark and Great Britain, there is no clear definition, and it is very difficult to prove in a lawsuit. Think about it. How do you prove a crime that leaves no physical marks and the only witness is the victim? Emotional abuse is characterized by a systematic, persisting and demeaning, scornful, devaluing, humiliating behavior from your partner. A partner that controls all your social life, financial decision, and manipulate and pressures you emotionally. Such a partner can be very jealous and demand to know where the woman is at all times. Yes, women are subjected to this type of violence 3.5 times as often as men in Denmark, which is why I will say she while talking about this subject. Perhaps she's constantly told how stupid, ugly, and incompetent she is. But it can also be much more subtle. And then she's manipulated by statements like, "You're too sensitive. You misunderstood. Or you're wrong." The consequences are often high level of stress, anxiety, and depressions, and even PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So, you might ask, how on earth could a person ever have misinterpreted this kind of relationship for love? How could they ever have come to the conclusion that they were not worthy of love and should be grateful for this kind of abuse? In my opinion, the attachment style theory offers the best explanation. And let me explain by telling you a story. It's the story about a little girl who grew up in an ordinary family with a father, mother, and a brother. They lived in a nice area, in a nice house, and the parents were well educated. But it's also a story about a mother who was mentally ill and who got admitted several times throughout the little girl's childhood. She suffered from anxiety, depressions, and later it turned out that she had personality disorders. So, the father was the primary caretaker in periods. He was ambitious, worked a lot, and he took care of the children's physical needs, but emotionally, he was incompetent. At times, he would demean and ridicule his children for showing emotions or not being good enough. So the little girl grew up with a mix of admiration and anxiety towards her father. When the girl was 5 years old, the mother was in a very bad traffic accident and she got hospitalized. The little girl, she was afraid that it was not just an accident and she couldn't shake the thought that she might have done it on purpose. So when the father shortly after decided to get a divorce, the little girl could not leave her mother and she stayed with her. So, at the age of 5, this little girl was already overly responsible, willing to set aside her own needs, blaming herself for her parents' bad mood. Sometimes the parents showed her affection and told her that they loved her. But for this girl, love was uncertain, and she grew up with a feeling of being unworthy of love, wrong, and ugly. Attachment style theory says that this little girl will very likely repeat this pattern in her adult relationship, setting her own needs aside, blaming herself for her partner's bad mood, and feeling grateful for any kind of love, even if it comes with abuse. Because love is uncertain, and for this girl, it becomes a repeatedly pattern. But on the other hand, we see children that are securely attached. They will grow up being independent and confident adults with high self-esteem and the ability to create a loving and caring relationship. So, how widespread is this phenomenon? Let's say that there's around 250 women in this room and the same number of men. Then 63 of the women and 33 of the men will have experienced this kind of unhealthy relationship, and some of them will still be in it. You may object and say that this kind of neglect is not particularly widespread, and that it only occurs in the lower classes of society. Well, in high-income countries like Denmark, between 35% and 40% of the population is unsecure attached, and it has nothing to do with social status. You can have a big, nice house, food on the table, and no emotional contact with your parents. So it is a considerable problem, not just for the individual, but also for society. Because we know that attachment style is passed on to the next generation, and we know that they're stable through life. The good news is that you can change an insecure in a more secure direction, and not all insecure attached ends up in a psychologically abusive relationship. In my work, I mostly work with women who have been or still are in these type of relationships, and I have seen some common themes. Themes that these women have learned throughout their upbringing, and they become part of their relationships. These women are often very good at seeing and meeting other people's needs and wants, but very poor of taking care of themselves. They often have difficulties with setting and maintaining their personal boundaries. And these women also have a tendency to internalize, which means that they look for explanations within themselves when something fails or does not succeed, especially in their relationships. They often have a very critical inner voice, an inner voice that is reinforced in the abusive relationship. And these women often live in the illusion of what the relationship or man could be, rather than relate to what is actually going on. And then they often have a deep feeling of loneliness, abandonment, and sadness. And it's these feelings that they try to avoid in the attempt to save the relationship or perhaps the partner. I truly feel that a loving and caring relationship is fundamental to a meaningful life. But some of us has a very bad starting point. I want to change that. In my work, I help clients examine and understand their attachment style, so they can become aware of old beliefs and patterns of action. I find that insight and awareness is the key to help these women to change. When they start to understand the relationship and how they themselves fitted into this destructive dance. Let's say you have a deep fear of being abandoned, then setting boundaries is an almost impossible act. But when you can accept and understand your own survival strategies, then it becomes possible for you to do something today that might be better. Accepting can be painful because it forces you to see the reality of your own avoidance and relate to the reality of the abusive relationship. I asked you in the beginning what you were willing to do for love. And for many, it's a relevant question. Will you listen with respect even though you don't agree? Will you try to understand your partner's feelings and motives even though it feels like they just want to annoy you? Will you show affection through lots of hugs and kisses and back off when your partner needs space? But sometimes you also need to ask yourself, what am I not willing to do for love? I will not let another person call me names, and I will not let people treat me disrespectfully, and I will not let people threaten me, because sometimes you need to say no to others and break the old pattern and say yes to yourself. Thank you.
You're so stupid. You're lucky you have me. Nobody else would ever want you. Oh, shut up. Don't give me that look. You don't know how good you have it. You suck at that. You're never going to amount to anything. Don't you know how much I love you? Abuse can be obvious. It can leave bruises. Abuse can also be less obvious and leave only internal pain and suffering. Whether physical or psychological, abuse is a form of bullying that undermines a person's self-esteem, tears families apart, and takes lives. Domestic violence is the leading cause of injury to women in the US. Every day, in this country alone, more than 3 women are murdered by their partners or loved ones. Almost half of all men and women in the US have experienced psychological abuse by an intimate partner. Many experience it on a daily basis. When people think of domestic violence or relationship abuse, they often think of the stereotypes that go along with it. The truth is, no one is immune to domestic violence. It can affect anyone, no matter what race, gender, socioeconomic background, level of education, religion, or sexual orientation. It is also important to remember that domestic violence is not just physical abuse. In fact, today I'm going to focus on the types of abuse that occur the most, yet are the least talked about: psychological and verbal abuse. I grew up in a house with my mother, father, and 3 siblings. I grew up in an unsafe house, in a house filled with yelling, cursing, and pain. It is really difficult to describe the way my father hurt my family. He had a way to make us feel worthless. He knew each of our weaknesses and imperfections and always found a time to point them out. Although my father was not physically abusive, we feared him. Whenever I stood up for myself or my family, he would corner me in my room and spew such anger and hatred that I feared for my life. One of the most difficult parts of living with an abuser is the unpredictability. Some days we would be like a normal family. Sometimes he would go for weeks without lashing out at us. It gave us all such false hope. But of course, someone would say something that he didn't like, or do something that he perceived as wrong, or listen to music when he didn't want to listen to it, or even laugh too much, and he would go off again. It was like this ticking time bomb ready to explode at any moment. Then he would make us feel guilty, as if we had really done something so awful to upset him like that, as if we deserved the things he said and the names he called us, as if we deserved the humiliation and the shame. He would control us and our thoughts, and after growing up with his voice inside my head at all times, I started to believe that the things he said were true. I started to believe that I was ugly, fat, stupid, worthless, and never going to amount to anything. It's been 2 years since my mom gained the courage to leave him. I finally have a safe, positive, loving house to come home to, with no one telling us our feelings are invalid, no one telling us to turn down our music when we are singing and dancing in the kitchen, and no one to tell us to stop laughing. When my father left, it was as if we could all finally breathe again. In fact, a few days after my father finally moved out of the house, my younger brother smiled up at me and told me that he no longer had to sleep facing his door at night, as if my father was some kind of monster that might be lurking outside his room. Nobody deserves to live this way. And yet, many of you might be in a situation similar to the one I was in. When I was younger, I thought that I was the only one who had experienced this. I thought I was all alone. I had heard of domestic violence before, but never realized that psychological abuse was just as real as physical abuse. Our society defines domestic violence in terms of bruises. It is time to acknowledge the internal scars of psychological and verbal abuse. It is so easy to get trapped in an abusive relationship, and yet it is so difficult to escape. Whether you are a teenager or an adult, you can get caught in an unhealthy relationship. To help you recognize one, I'd like to share 5 common signs of abuse. Now, although these are usually prominent elements of abuse, every situation is unique. 1, you'll be swept off your feet. In the beginning of the relationship, it will be everything you ever wanted. The fairy tale every kid grows up hearing about. You'll be told that you're beautiful, and you'll be showered with compliments. And you may even fall in love. But before you know it, you will be blamed and humiliated. You will be told that you are not enough. And you may even start to feel as though you are not enough. 2, your partner will force you to get rid of the things that make you you. By doing this, your partner will brainwash you and make you leave behind your old identity. 3, to gain control, your partner will isolate you from your friends and loved ones and make you dependent on them. 4, the abuser will scream, yell, and curse at you, and always find a time to point out your imperfections and mistakes. 5, your partner will deny they ever did something wrong and blame you for their actions. People shy away from conversations about domestic violence because it's easier to try to sweep it under the rug and ignore it than it is to face the difficulties and complexities of abuse. But this is the reason why we need to talk about it. I speak to you today to educate, to raise awareness, and to inspire change. I speak to all of those kids that are in my shoes. You are not alone. I speak for the millions of others around the world who have stories similar to mine, but who do not have a voice to share them. Thank you.
So today I want to talk to you a little bit more about signs of mental and emotional abuse. This is such an important topic, and there are so many different signs that you can learn about that will help you to understand if you or somebody you know might be in one of these abusive relationships. I'm Dr. Sonia, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I've worked with many people who have struggled with their relationships and trying to determine if they should stay or they should go. And one of the things that I'm always concerned about is working with people who are in relationships that are unhealthy or abusive. And as a therapist, I really want to help them to understand and make a good decision about some of the signs they're seeing and support them, whether they want to try to set good boundaries in the relationship or whether they want to try to receive help to exit the relationship. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about some of these signs. In addition to jealousy, one of the other things that an abusive partner, emotionally abusive partner, will do is try to monitor and control who you speak to and when you speak to them. And they may do this through going through your phone or your social media or your computer, or monitoring who you're spending time with and when you're spending time with these people. There's a big difference between concern and control, and if somebody wants to monitor every aspect of your life, they're probably more controlling than they are concerned about you. Mind games are a really common tool of people who are emotionally abusive. Basically, what they will do is try to make you deny your own reality. So, for example, they might say something, and then when you confront them about what they said, whether it was cruel or harsh or untrue, they'll deny ever saying it in the first place. And this has the effect of keeping you entirely off balance and really doubting your own reality and your own perception. Another common term for this behavior is gaslighting. And if you're with somebody who's gaslighting, it's super important to get help to set some really clear boundaries and decide if this is the type of relationship you want to be in. If you're in a long-term partnered relationship with someone who is emotionally abusive, you may find that they will exclude you from important family decisions. So basically what this does is it puts them in a position of power and leaves you feeling really isolated from the important dynamics of the family. It's a great way to control somebody and keep them from having an active voice in their own life and their own choices. In addition to excluding you from important family decisions, another classic technique of an emotionally abusive person is to control your access to finances, either through having you give them your money that you make, or if you are at home and you're not working, they may only allow you a small allowance, and they may monitor every financial transaction that you make. And the reason that they do this is really it's just another form of control and a way to keep you trapped in an unhealthy situation. Along with control, threats are a common technique of an abusive individual. Basically, they will threaten to leave you or divorce you anytime you try to set a boundary or to assert yourself or to express any displeasure with the way that they're treating you. Another strategy that an abuser will use is they will blame you for their bad behavior. So they may say something mean, they may do something cruel, and instead of taking responsibility for their own actions, they will say that somehow you were the cause of that behavior on their part. This is a very subtle but powerful tactic to control another person. If any of these signs we talked about today resonate with you, or if you recognize either yourself or someone else in an emotionally abusive relationship, I really encourage you to reach out for help. There are many licensed counselors who can basically help you determine if you are in an abusive relationship, and if you choose to stay in the relationship, help you set boundaries. And if you choose to leave the relationship, help you with all of the emotions and feelings that will arise around this difficult decision. If you like this video, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you'll find a lot more content on a variety of mental health topics. And if you're interested in learning more about online counseling, please click the link to BetterHelp.com below.